Hey YouTube, this is PrimetimePokemon. In this video, I'll be reviewing my Rayquaza GX and Vikavolt deck. Now this video is geared towards the competitive player in the 2019 Standard Format. This is the second deck review that I've done for the 2019 Standard Format. You'll find a link to the playlist I've created for these types of videos in the description of this video. So I'll lay out this video the same as my other deck review videos. The beginning of this video, I'll give an overview for the general strategy of the deck. The middle part of this video, I'll show the deck checklist. And then a majority of this video, I'll be going through each and every card in this deck, stating why the card is in the deck, as well as how many cards I use of that particular card. Now this deck checklist I did find from the Charizard Lounge. I was looking for a very competitive Rayquaza GX deck out there. I personally like the combination of Rayquaza GX and Vikavolt. I think it is the best version of a Rayquaza GX out there. So when it comes to general strategy for this deck, of course Rayquaza GX is your primary attacker. I pair Rayquaza GX with Vikavolt to accelerate both grass and lightning type energy. The ability on Rayquaza GX already helps accelerate energy, but then Dragon Break can do major damage every single turn the more energy cards you have attached to your Pokemon. Once you get a couple of Rayquaza GX in play and set up, you can pretty much one-hit knock out any Pokemon out there. And what I am noticing with the standard format right now is that a lot of slower decks to set up are actually doing better, just because there's not a lot of ways to quickly start attacking in some of the decks out there, especially after the rotation. Things like Max Elixir are long gone, things like Strong Energy, things that increase a Pokemon's attack. Because of the rotation of some of the important supporters out there, I do use a couple of Pokemon in this deck to help draw cards. Oranguru is similar to what Octillery used to be able to do, except for the ability on Oranguru only allows you to draw cards until you get 3 cards into your hand. And then Marshadow from Shining Legends actually modifies your opponent's hand. So if they're using something like Beacon on a Alolan Vulpix or anything that gets specific cards they want into their hand, you can then lay down Marshadow and modify their hand. And then specifically in this deck, I use 1 copy of Energy Recycler just because I am discarding a lot of cards with Stormy Winds on Rayquaza, as well as if a Rayquaza GX gets knocked out, more than likely several energy cards will be going into the discard pile. And then again, with Stormy Winds, you are discarding cards, so I use a couple of copies of Rescue Stretcher to get those discarded Pokemon back into my deck or hand. But the strategy overall is very straightforward. You want to get 1 or 2 Vikavolt set up on your bench and then just start attacking with Rayquaza GX every single turn, doing as much damage with Dragon Break as possible. On the screen now you can see the deck checklist. As I mentioned, 13 total Pokemon. Mainly Rayquaza is the primary attacker, but if you're facing a troll deck, something like Hoopa from Shining Legends or anything that limits what GX cards can do, Vikavolt does have a decent attack on it, being able to do a fair amount of damage. It just requires 4 energy cards to actually be able to use, but you can accelerate energy in this deck pretty easily. I use only 1 copy of Tapu Lele GX to go and get a supporter I need, something that will allow me to draw additional cards into my hand. As far as trainer cards go, 33 total. I use 4 copies of both Cynthia and Guzma. Those are staples in pretty much any competitive deck out there. I specifically use Volkner because this is a lightning type deck, and that card is useful because it allows you to move both an item and an energy card into your hand. And then of course, I do skip over Charjabug in this deck, so I use 4 copies of Rare Candy. It's very important to try and get Rare Candy into your hand to start the game, or at least during your second turn, so you can get Vikavolt set up and start accelerating energy. And then I use the 1 copy of Energy Recycler to recycle those energy cards that have been discarded. And then because there's no such thing as Floatstone in this format, at least right now, I use both Switch and Escape Rope to help retreat Pokemon. And then as far as energy cards go, 14 total, 7 grass, 7 lightning. And I think that number is a good number just because you always want to be able to add energy from your deck to your Pokemon with Vikavolt. I'll go through each and every card in this deck now, starting with the Pokemon, 13 total. I used 4 copies of this Rayquaza from the Celestial Storm set. This is a basic GX card, a decent HP of 180. The card does have a high retreat cost. That's why I have so many different ways to retreat an active Pokemon. The card has an ability and 2 attacks. Stormy Winds. Its ability says, when you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench during your turn, you may discard the top 3 cards of your deck. If you do, attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to this Pokemon. Like I was talking about in the open, there's ways to specifically discard energy, therefore making it 100% guaranteed that Stormy Winds will hit each and every time it is used. Dragon Break is the main attack on this card, and really the main attack and the only attack you really want to use in this entire deck. For 3 energy cards, it does 30 damage times the number of basic grass and lighting energy attached to your Pokemon. So you can have a few different Rayquaza GX in play, and really it just takes 6 energy total to start knocking out GX cards in one turn. And then Tempest GX for 1 grass energy is very useful. You can use this as soon as you get Rayquaza GX in the active Pokemon spot, discard your hand, and draw 10 cards. And then Hala, which I use in this deck, benefits from the fact that you've already used your GX attack. Next up would be the Grubbin Vikavolt line. I used 3 of each. Both are from the Sun and Moon base set. I use Rare Candy to get to Vikavolt. I do not use Charge-a-Bug in this deck. Grubbin does have an above average HP, which is helpful, of 70. And then for 2 energy cards, it does 20 damage. It does have a high retreat cost, so you really never want to try and get Grubbin in the active Pokemon spot if you can help it. And then Vikavolt is used for energy acceleration. It is a stage 2 lightning type card. 150 HP is decent. Its ability, Strong Charge, is the reason to use the card. It says, once during your turn, you may search your deck for a grass energy and a lightning energy and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like. Then shuffle your deck. And if you are facing something that limits GX cards, Electro Cannon for 4 energy can do 150 damage. However, you must discard 3 energy from this Pokemon, and that's where it's useful to use Energy Recycler to recycle those discarded energy. But ideally, you want to get 2 Vikavolt set up on your bench. That way, if you do have a Rayquaza GX knocked out, the very next turn, you can get enough energy cards into play to one-hit knockout whatever Pokemon is in your opponent's active spot. I use 1 copy of Oranguru from Sun and Moon base set. This is another card that can be helpful if you are facing a deck that limits what GX cards can do. It is a basic Pokemon, a solid HP of 120. The main reason to use this card is for its ability, Instruct. It says once during your turn, you may draw cards until you have 3 cards in your hand. Of course, Octillery would allow you to draw cards until you have 5 cards in your hand. That card has been rotated out. And then for 3 energy cards, Psychic does 60 damage plus 20 more damage times the amount of energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. And even though this card does have a high attack cost, with the energy acceleration in this deck, Psychic is a little more viable, and you may be able to use it a little bit easier. I also use 1 copy of Marshadow from Shining Legends. Mainly, I do not want to attack with this card, but I'm using its ability. Marshadow is a basic Pokemon with an HP of 70. It does have a low retreat cost. Its ability is called Let Loose. It says, when you play this Pokemon from your hand on your bench during your turn, you may have each player shuffle their hand into their deck and draw 4 cards. With the rotation of N, the ability to modify your opponent's hand has been lost. This is one way to be able to get some of that modification back. And then again, you can also use Judge. And then Shadow Punch for 2 energy cards does 30 damage. So again, you want to just play this card onto your bench and leave it there. And then the last Pokemon in this deck would be a standard and most competitive decks out there, Tapu Lele GX. This is from the Guardians Rising set. 170 HP for this basic GX. Wonder Tag is the main reason to use this card, its ability. When you put this card from your hand onto your bench, you can search your deck for a supporter card. And then Energy Drive, for 2 colorless energy, does do 20 damage times the amount of energy attached to both active Pokemon. So although Rayquaza GX is the main attacker in this deck, a lot of the other Pokemon in the deck are able to do a significant amount of damage when attacking. Now I'll move on to the trainer cards. 33 total. I'll start with the supporters first. 14 supporters in this deck. 5 different supporters. First up would be Cynthia. I used 4 copies of this card from the Ultra Prism set. Shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw 6 cards. Very, very useful and easily the best supporter out in the 2019 Standard Format right now. I also used 4 copies of Guzma. This is from Burning Shadows. Switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active Pokemon. If you do, switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. This is useful for retreating a Pokemon for free or putting a Pokemon in your opponent's active Pokemon spot then you can knock out in one turn. Then I use 3 copies of Lily, and this is another card that allows you to draw cards into your hand. This is from Shining Legends. Draw cards until you have 6 cards in your hand. If it's your first turn, draw cards until you have 8 cards in your hand. So you're trying to use this supporter the first turn of the game so you can get 8 total cards instead of 6. I then use 2 copies of Hala. This is from Guardians Rising. It says, shuffle your hand into your deck. If you have used your GX attack, draw 7 cards. If not, draw 4 cards. And if you use Rayquaza GX's GX attack, the first turn that you can, Hala can then draw 7 cards each turn and is even better than Cynthia. And then I use 1 copy of Volkner from Ultra Prism. It says, search your deck for an item card and a lightning energy card. Reveal them and put them into your hand. Then shuffle your deck. So it's useful for getting an item card like an Ultra Ball or a Rare Candy, something that will let you complete the Grubbin to Vikavolt line. 19 item and tool cards I use in this deck. First up would be the most important item card in this entire deck, Rare Candy. You can put this on a basic Pokemon and evolve it right into their Stage 2 evolution. So again, that's how I get from Grubbin to Vikavolt. 4 copies of this card I use. Then I also use 4 copies of Ultra Ball. You have to discard 2 cards from your hand, maybe 2 energy cards, and then go and get a Pokemon and put it into your hand. So I can go and get the 1 Tapu Lele, for example. Maybe I have a Rare Candy in my hand and need to go and get Vikavolt, or maybe I want to go and get something like a Rangaroo for its draw ability. And then I use 3 copies of Nest Ball. This says to search your deck for a basic Pokemon and put it onto your bench. Then shuffle your deck. Now the disadvantage here is that if you use Nest Ball to go and get Rayquaza, you can then not utilize its ability. But if you already have Vikavolt set up and you can use its ability, you don't really have to use Rayquaza GX's ability because then it will discard 3 cards with Stormy Winds. Next up would be Rescue Stretcher. I used 2 copies of this card because of Stormy Winds and the fact you have to discard cards from your deck, put them in your discard pile. You may discard some Pokemon that you do not want to. This is a great way to get those cards back. And then I used 2 copies of Switch because Floatstone has been rotated out. I used 2 copies of this card. Switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. And some of the cards in this deck do have very high retreat costs, including Rayquaza GX and Vikavolt. So an easy way to retreat those Pokemon for free. I use 1 copy of Escape Rope. This is a simplified version of Guzma. Each player switches their active Pokemon with one of their bench Pokemon. Your opponent switches first. I use 1 copy of Field Blower, mainly to get rid of something like Shrine of Punishment. that does damage to GX cards out there. It also would get rid of something like Brooklet Hill or Choice Band. I use 1 copy of Energy Recycler, shuffle 5 basic energy cards from your discard pile into your deck, and with 14 total energy cards in the deck, this isn't a huge problem, running out of energy cards, but it is very helpful to make sure you have energy cards in your deck with Vikavolt. And then I use 1 copy of Choice Band. With Rayquaza GX, you should already be able to one-hit knock out most Pokemon out there. But if you're using one of the other attackers in this deck, the additional 30 damage this card does when attached as a Pokemon tool to your Pokemon when attacking GX cards really can make a difference. On to the energy cards now. Like I just mentioned, I use 14 total, 7 grass and 7 lightning. I do like the fact that Rayquaza GX can benefit from either type of energy, so it helps with Vikavolt that it can accelerate both of these types of basic energy. But there's a look at my Rayquaza GX and Vikavolt deck. I think this is the best version, at least right now, of a Rayquaza GX out there. On the screen you can see the deck checklist again. But if you have any modifications or other strategies with this deck, please let me know. And as always, if you have any deck suggestions you'd like me to review in the future on my channel, please let me know. And you can always battle me on the online game as well. My name there is PrimetimePokemon. So there you have it. Thanks everyone for watching. As always, before you go, make sure to check out all the links in the description of this video, including links to my blog, Facebook, and Twitter pages. So thanks everyone for watching, and stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.